to start so that everybody can join. Okay. So yesterday we completed our weather app, right? So we explained the various things that are on there, how it works, and how things happen, right? Like how we are displaying data, how we are getting the data from the API, and how we are displaying the data. And we covered quite a number of things too. So we talked about how you can use the for loop to get, like, if you have multiple data in an array form, you can use the for loop to get whatever data is in there, to just to avoid repeating yourself, because when you are coding and you want to be optimal, you want to try as much as possible to not repeat yourselves that much. So that was kind of like the highlight of what we did yesterday. So today I said we'll be discussing some other things, like the map API, right? So there's this thing called map. It's not an API actually. So map is kind of like a method in JavaScript, right? It allows you to do certain things which we are going to explore. So okay. So it allows us to do certain things on the data that we're getting from an API. So let's say we had a lot of things that we're getting from the API. I want to be able to get specific values without actually having to use this for loop. There is this method that is pre-built into JavaScript that allows us to do that. Kind of like the for each statement, right? Like the for each also does it, but the map is kind of like a better way to do it. Like once you get your data, it is easy to transform it into whatever you want to transform it into. Okay, so mm, okay, okay. Mm, so essentially, what the map allows us to do, it allows us to create a new array based off of what we have in an array. So the map essentially, let me just try to find let's see. Let's define an array. Okay. Array, let's say DPT JavaScript classes. Okay. So I'll explain this in a second so you guys can see. But essentially, what it allows us to do is to call a function, right, that does something. So you can just do this as y. I'll explain this in a second. I just want to write it out. Okay. Okay. Mm, okay. Now, so what's the dot map property allows you to do, right, is it allows you to be able to like create new arrays by calling the old array that you want to map over, and it allows you to do something with it. So essentially what it does in essence is that it allows you the ability to do certain things with an array that you have before. Now, what this dot map does now is it takes a callback function. You know, we explained what callback functions are. Callback functions are functions that you write inside of a function, right? So let's say I have a function add, right? And let's say this console.log. This has another function with console. What this does is console logs console.log something, right? I call this here. Now, essentially, what this consular function is inside of this consular function is a callback for this add function. Anytime you have a function inside of another function, it is more or less a callback function. I don't know if you get me, but let's say you have a function, right? Give me a second to see if this works actually. Or it doesn't. So anytime you have a function that you call inside of another function, that function is a callback to the parent function. The parent function in this case being the topmost function, like the function that you are calling something inside. So that's essentially what a callback function is. Now, this dot map property, what it does is it takes the dot map method, rather, what it does, it takes a callback function, right? And the callback function performs certain actions that you want it to. So let's say you want to you want to perform certain actions with what this okay, let's not start with this. Let's do something else. Let's start with something basic. So let me comment this out and just do console.log y, right? Now, what we have here is this first line is an array, right? We all know what this is. It's an array. And the second line is a new array with the capital A, right? And what we are doing is we are mapping the function, we are mapping something into this new array, right? So what this will do is dot map, what it does is it just allows us to be able to perform certain actions on each element of the array that we are mapping on. Now, what I mean is, this is the array, right? ARR, and this is map. So what map allows us to do is it allows us to do certain things on each element that we have in this ARR. Let me just call this something more clear. Let's say stuff, right? So let's name this stuff. Now, what this dot map allows us to is it allows us to call each item in this stuff array and perform certain actions on them. And whenever you perform certain actions on them, that action that you performed is stored inside of a new array, right? It's stored inside of a new variable. Now, let's say, okay, line, what is this? Line 13. Okay. Mm, let's comment that out. So now we can see now that here, let's see if this still works. Okay. Now you can see now that what this map allows us to, yes, is it allows us to perform a certain function or a certain action on the on the um on the array that we are getting from a particular website, like from a particular array. It allows us to perform actions on an array. That's what map does. It's kind of like the for each statement. If you want to write the for each statement, we do something like let's say stuff, right? dot for each. Then what this does is it takes a callback function, right? So you can just write something like this. And let's say console dot log y. Y. Okay. What is this? Let it take this area away now. What's all this now? Why is it not lifting this error? Sorry. I just want to see why this is there. Yes. Okay. Now let's just stop dot for each now. What this will do is to take a callback function, which we can write this way and do this and say cl y y. Now let me also look this up. Now you can see that it does exactly what this map function does. So the array method, this stuff, and this for each method, it allows us to be able to call certain actions with respect to whatever element you are getting from each array. You remember when we were doing for each, what for each was is, let's say you have an array of things, right? And each contains an element. So we want to be able to perform an action with each element that is there. So that's essentially what the for each does. Let's say I want to say console.log y plus, then I do something like is fun, right? So what this would print out is it will take each element inside of this array and it will print plus is fun to it. So we have DPD is fun, JavaScript is fun, and classes is fun, right? So this map method is essentially like a for each statement too, but it comes with other things that are actually quite useful when you want to do them. So what do I mean? Let's say you want to perform a specific action on data that is coming from a website, right? So this allows you to do stuff like that, like you're able to call like you're able to perform certain actions with respect to the data that you're getting. Now let's see. Okay, give me a second. Shift N. I want to check something. I may even remember to zoom in my what's it called? My fonts. So I just want to check. I want to quickly run through something. Okay. 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 Let me just fix this now. Now, so that's essentially what the map is. So the map allows us to be able to perform certain actions on elements inside of an array and do certain actions with them. Like we can print them to the console, we can perform evaluations with them, we can actually do like printing it to the JavaScript file. So let's say we want to do on every Y that it gets, right? We want to be able to like say um, what's let's see which tag that we have. I think there's an error tag, right? So and it is defined with the error. Okay, error. So we already have a predefined. No, let me just define it again. Let's put a new class there. Right? So for this one, let's put it Okay, we have overview already. Let's use overview. Okay. Okay. So let's say we are taking this line here, right? Let's see the next option. So now, what are we doing here? Let's say this is a stuff array, right? It contains just three elements, right? So, and what we are doing is we are mapping the elements that are inside of this, and we are performing certain actions on those elements. So, what this will do is it will take DPD, right? It will put DPD here, and what it will do whenever we have these elements, right? Whenever we have the first element, you will do something like documents.query selector. Then we are targeting the class of overview here, this overview here, right? And we are saying document create selector overview dot text content to y. So whenever we have an element in an array, in this array, right, we have DPD. To bring DPD here, it would target this document create selector of overview, and it will it will set the text content to whatever this value is. So when it runs first, it will be DPD. The next time it will JavaScript, and the next time it will be classes. But I don't think we're going to see all of that at once. Now you see the same thing occurred yesterday um when we had the data that I get from the site, it was returning the last one. That's because whenever it goes through all of the data, right, it will do for the first one, the second one, till it reaches the last one. And we are targeting a single class, right? So if we are targeting multiple classes now, that would have been different, right? So the reason why it's only printing out classes is because we are targeting a single element, and what we are doing is we wanted to print out what is in this stuff array to text content. And when it runs this, it will run this one first, right? And it will run this one second and this one last. And this is where it would stop. So let's say I had like Control X now. So let's say I had two data in that array. You see now that what this is JavaScript now. It does not say the value for this one is what's it called? The value for this one is classes anymore. It's because the last data in the array is actually JavaScript. So if I was to return this now, you see that we have classes back. So what this does is it would return for each element inside of an array, right? For each element inside of an array, it would return the value that we have. I don't know if you get. So for each element inside of this array, it would return that value and print it out to this overview class that we have written before. And why is that doing so? Is because we are using this map. What map will do is it will take each element, it will put DPD in first. So DPD will be there. Take JavaScript will be there, and take classes, and also classes will be there. So let's say I reverse the order of this now, right? Control X, and I put this last. So what we are going to be saying is going to be DPD because it will run JavaScript, then classes, then DPD. You can see now that what we have is DPD. So that's essentially what the dot map does. So let's say, for example, we want to print, we just want to print a certain element outright without actually setting. Like let's say we don't have this div here, right? We don't have this div here. We wanted to create our own div with the documents and with the DOM elements. I wanted to create our own div. So let's see how we go about that. Mm, Fatima, your background is really loud though, and your video is even on. Fatima, can you hear me? God bless you. Michael, please could you make me host or probably host and mute Fatima? Really, what's going on? Thank you. So, mm, okay, create element. Okay. Okay. Let's see what I would do. Hmm. Oh, imagine what I was doing is create element of div dot next content. HTML. Okay. Um, Okay. Okay. Next. Hmm. Come, I'll explain this in a bit. I just want to do something. Okay. Okay. Let's make that. Okay. Okay. I get why this is happening this way. I don't want to target the body. How can I target? All right. This is not correct. All right. So let me explain that. Now, so what I wanted to do was to actually I'm writing in this line here. I said document dot create element. So I think I mentioned it's like what the document dot create element does is it creates a new element, an element in the sense that it can be a div, You can create any elements that you want actually. You can create an A tag, you can create a div, a P tag, a heading tag, an HTML tag, whatever you want to create. Do you get? That's what documents or create elements will do. So in the argument, all you have to do is just you pass the elements I want to create, you pass it in as a string. So whatever that value is the tag that is going to create for you. So here I'm doing a documents or query selector, right, of current. And what this does is it targets this current class that we have here, this current class, this whole class. It targets it, right? And it does I do something like dot append child. So I think I mentioned it in one of the classes that we did that what append child does is it would attach like whatever argument you pass into append child, right? It will attach that to the end, like to the last div that we have. So let's say in the class of current, right? And temperature range is the last div that we have. What that will do is it will attach this whatever you are passing in to the last to the last line. So what that would do essentially is it will bring the what are we creating? The div that we are creating, this one here, it will append it immediately after overview. That's why we have it down here. So that's why we have DPD down here. Like it's attaching it immediately after this overview. You know the overview is not there. The overview is just a class. But also delete the overview now. I think that should move up. Control Shift Home delete. So you see that this DPD moved up. So that's because the overview was there and so it was taking up unnecessary space. So what this append child does is it would append the elements that we're creating to the last line immediately after the last elements inside of this inside of the div that you're targeting. So most of the times the first one that I did, it was bringing it to the side because I was targeting the body, right? So when I targeted the body elements, it put it like immediately after this main container. We don't want that. So I put it inside of the current after selecting it and I appended it there. So this next line, what I'm doing now is I'm mapping over the values of whatever is in this stuff area, right? I'm mapping that value over to this element here and I'm setting the inner HTML to whatever that value is. Essentially, what I'm doing is whenever I have an array, right? Whenever I have something, right? I want to be able to map. Let me try this out actually and see. I don't know if it still works, but I think it does. Yeah, it still does. So I don't actually have to assign it to any value. But what I'm doing is I'm mapping the values of this function, right? I'm putting it here. So whenever that happens, you want to be able to you want to set the inner HTML. Interesting. Okay. So you want to set the inner HTML of this new div. You want to set it to the value of whatever y is. So it will run for JavaScript, run for classes, and run for DPD, right? And that's why we're seeing DPD last, but it has not yet solved our problem. And what the problem is for whenever we have an element, I want to be able to create a new element, right? I want to be able to create a new div or a new H1 tag that says something. So I think that is what I have to do. I will not I will not use this actually. Let me see if I put it directly to
Abdullah, sorry, can I quickly ask something?
yeah, go ahead, please.
On that very line that you are just typing, so like I'm actually confused with that line, the whole of that line.
Okay. Let me just explain what I am doing. Now, what this line is, let me return to the original state, right? Okay, I think this one should work. Now, essentially, let's turn this to stop. So let me take this away because I just did something like clean. So what this line actually does, right, is you know the for each statement, right? You know how the for each statement works, that it will get each element inside of an array and you do a callback function that does something with it, right? So that's exactly what the map function does too. It would take each element that you have inside of the array, which is going to be this argument here, and it would print out whatever you want. Like it will do anything that you want. You just create a function. So whatever you're writing inside of that function is what is going to evaluate. Do you get? So what the dot map does is, I mentioned it, like if you wanted to use for each, right, you do something like stuff dot for each, and let's say you create something like this, which is an arrow function, right? Let's say you want to console.log. So what the for each will do is it will take each element here, right? That's going to be the argument here. Then whatever you pass in immediately after this arrow function, which is going to be the body of your function, that's what is going to evaluate. That's exactly what this map also does. Now let's check this line 3. Like let's check what it does. So let's do F12, right? And in the console, you see it prints out JavaScript, then classes, then DPG. So that's exactly what this map function does too. So let's say I wanted to do in the map now, or let me console this out. And I wanted to do something like stuff.map, then I do something like CL with Y, right? And I comment the top one out, the for each one out. You see, it will print out exactly what we did, right? It is printing out the JavaScript, then classes, then DPG. Do you get? So it does exactly what the for each statement will do, but the application would see it in a minute when we actually use like real life API and real life data, not the this kind of data. Do you get? So you see the application then. But hopefully I cleared your confusion. Or is it this new
Okay,
div
so
for each?
just what the map does, just like the for each, right?
Yes, exactly. It does exactly like that, but it has its own added advantage. Do you get?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it works exactly like the for each. It does the exact same thing. It just has its own perks. That's why it is used the most.
Okay, sorry, but this line that you commented out, like it was confusing to me. New div dot inner HTML is equals to y. Like, what's the y there now?
Okay. So let me explain that. So essentially in JavaScript, you can create new elements using the documents of create elements, right? This line here, this new div, right? This line 3. You see from there, we are just saying what new div is document or create element of div. That means we are creating a div and storing that value in this new div. Kind of like how we would do something like this, face it. So how we'd say error is equals to document or query selector of error, right? We are targeting the error class and we are just storing that in a variable. So that's exactly what we are doing here. We are creating a new element and we are storing it in a variable. So the element does not come with JavaScript here. The element does not come with our HTML file. The element is not here at all. So we don't have anything here. So what this will do is it will create a new element called div, right? Now, this line that I commented out, essentially what I said the map does is it takes a callback function and the callback function will do anything that you want it to do, right? Now, in this case, what we are doing is what y is an argument. And what should I say? So what y is actually, it's an argument, right? An argument is supposed to be in brackets, but since I mentioned it, I said if you have only one argument, you don't need to put it in brackets. You can just write it that way. But this essentially is an argument, right? By writing y, which is an argument, then the arrow function just to like write our function, right? And what I'm doing is new div dot inner HTML. Whenever you want to set the inner HTML or the text content of a div, right? This is when we do this inner HTML thing, right? Or we could do something like text content, right? This is what we are doing, right? So we can set the text content. But this is the arguments that we want to print out or that we want to show on our browser. And y is what is coming. So we want to set the text content of this to be equal to whatever value that is coming from y. So let's say the value of y is, let's say we added a new value called or something you get. Now, what this will do is it will print, it will put it will take JavaScript, right? It will put it here. Then to set that text content of this new div, it will set it to JavaScript. Do the same thing for classes, set it to JavaScript to classes. Do the same thing for DPD, put it here. It will set the text content of new div to DPD, and it comes to Okpo too. So it will put Okpo here and it will send, it would what's it called? It would print out whatever value we have to the new div that we're creating. So that like you can understand now, you can see in this line here that we have Oppo, which is the last thing that it should print, right? So if you check our JavaScript resources to let me zoom this in so you guys can see. So in the elements now, if you check the body, let's to container, right? Where is this section that contains? Now, in this current, we are attaching it to the current. You have this div, you have the class, you have the temperature range, this description that we commented out. We also have this new div, right? It's called Ukmo. But if you check our HTML file originally, there's nothing like that here. So what we are doing in our JavaScript is we are creating a new div, right? With this document.create element of div, right? Then we are setting the inner HTML or the text content in this case, right? We are setting it to the value that we're getting from here. So that's what we are doing with this line. But for it to show, we have to actually append the child. That's what this line is for. Let me bring it down. So for this to show in our browser, actually, this is just, we are just creating it in JavaScript. It does not know that anything is there, right? So for this to actually show, it would create, what we are doing is we're targeting a selector of current. And what current is this container div here, this container, this one, that houses the temperature, the weather, and the temperature range, right? So what we are doing is we are selecting that class and we are appending. By append, we mean just add. That's just the meaning of append, right? So you want to append something to something, we are adding it to it. So we are appending a child. What append child will do is it will take the div that you are creating or anything essentially. It can be an H1, can be anything, right? And it will add it. Let's change this to H1 now, right? If this change, let's change this to H3 because of the text size. Let's do H5. So what this will do is it will attach this H5 and it will attach it to our browser here. So when we check our browser, let's go and check this now. You can see now that in current, we don't have a div again. What we have is an H5. So what the append child does is it will just take whatever elements that we are passing in as the arguments. It will append it to the class that we are selecting. So let's say, for example, I wanted to select this location class and print it there. So what I'll just do is I'll just change this to, instead of dot current, I'll change this to dot location. And what this will do is it will append this H5 element. It will append it to the last line of this location. So it will append it immediately after this date here that we have. So let's check our browser now. So let's see. Section, container, then this location, right? So we have it here, H5. So if you check our browser too, it's actually the same thing too. So you have it here. So that's essentially what this line is for. So we are mapping the content of this this array. It just makes sense. We are mapping the content. What mapping the content means is we are taking each element, right, and we are doing something with that element. So what are we doing? What we are doing is we are setting the text content of this div that we have on top, or this H5. We are setting the text content to the value that we are getting from the array. Do you understand? Or it's all messed up again?
I understand now.
Okay. So sorry, does everyone understand, or if you don't understand any part, because today is the last class, apart from probably the makeup class that hopefully I want to do tomorrow. So if you don't understand anything, please kindly call me back. We don't actually have to build the app today. We might actually do it tomorrow. And since it is the other part of the class, we can do it. But if you don't understand the concept now, kindly call me back so I can explain.
So please, I want to ask you something. What
Okay.
of hosting the website?
Okay. Essentially,
The WordPress.
I'm not the one taking WordPress. I don't know if
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if there's an avenue for that, but I'm not taking WordPress because I don't know WordPress at all. I don't even use it. I've not used it before.
Okay.
But I think all of these things, I just think that people like are really, you always feel like it's something like really tasking. I feel like whenever you feel you want to do something, just go do it. Like let's say you want to check on WordPress now and how to use WordPress. It won't take you
Okay.
more than two or more YouTube tutorials, probably an hour or two, to actually get the hang. If you're not going to be an expert, do you get? But you get the hang
Yeah.
of, oh, okay, you want to do this thing, this is how you do it. People are always thinking like if you don't know, like if you're new to a particular concept, you always feel like it's probably very hard. And personally myself, I've experienced it because like there are new tools that almost come out every day. I be like, this thing is probably for pro. I cannot do this, I cannot do this. And when I actually go to their documentation, I actually they're like, this thing is actually very easy. It's not really something that only gurus can do. So I feel even without an instructor, it just takes your own personal will. If you want to learn it or you want to do it, you will do it. There's nothing obscure anymore. Like we're not in the olden days where it's only a few people that have the knowledge. Go to YouTube. Go. The number of YouTube tutorials that you can see on JavaScript, I cannot count it. Millions of crash courses, like millions, literally.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand the concept, you don't have to wait till let's wait till our tutor or someone explains this. You can just go to Google, even if it's just like how to create a new div. You say now I don't know how to create a new div. I've forgotten. I went to Google and I searched it out. Does that make me any
Oh,
less your instructor? No. So it's not something that is like really far or distant. Once you get to know it, once you get to know, like once you get to like actually check it, you see that it's nothing really hard. So
okay.
but I don't
Then
know.
I understand what you're saying. I wanted to ask you one more thing. This
Okay.
this API now that you're teaching, I guess we can also use it to a kind of create a map and that has to locate a geographical location for maybe something.
I don't get you. Can you reframe the question?
Okay,
I
for
don't
example, assuming someone is trying to create a map now, maybe
mm-hmm.
once you click on the map, maybe map of Nigeria now, once you click on the map, maybe city to take you to Lagos to start bringing out all the houses in Lagos, the details, the things in Lagos. Isn't all this stuff we're going to use for that one?
Essentially, what the map is not for real maps. Do you get like probably physical maps or maps of countries? What the map is allows you to just. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept of mapping. Like in math, map is just you want to draw, like you want to join something with a certain something. Like you want to be able to perform certain actions due to certain conditions, more or less. So this map is not what
It's
you
not
would.
like that one. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So what the map is just for you to be able to get like let's say this is a data now, right? What the map does is allows you to get one data and do something with it, get another data and do
Okay,
something with it,
and do
get another data.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Understand.
Cool.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Um, kind of like a short quiz now. You are still going to use that JSON quiz with us. See, since you're not asking questions, I will assume that you understand. So everybody must do this quiz. So nobody asks questions. I'm going to assume that you understand everything. Now, what you are going to do as the service is no. So what you are going to do as the okay, let me not do this because we have not actually treated how to use the APIs. But essentially, it's simple. So let's treat how to use it with APIs. Actually, the map. Now, okay. Hmm, what do I want to do? Hmm. Okay, let me mention this. Let me just do this one. I'll do this one. Let's change this API here. Um, Okay. Now you remember this line from yesterday. what this is essentially is that we are mapping, I said map, we are fetching the data from this API, right? And what this API is just a random, like an API with random data, right? So we can see that it has multiple objects. It has 10 objects. It is an array that has 10 objects, right? But essentially it's still an array. It is an array that has all of this. Instead of it having a string, it just has an object. So you can actually use the map function on it too, or the map method on it too. So how do you do that? So let me take this out. Wait. Oh, I think I made a mistake here. All right. So let me take this away. Now, what we are doing is we are setting users to be equal to response. From yesterday, what we do is we are fetching this data, right? Then we are returning the response, and we are tuning it to this data function that has this response thing. So what I want to do now is I want to show us how we can use the map on any data that we are getting from an external from an API. So what you can do is you do users.map. And essentially what is users? Before we do that, let me just do okay. So let's do CL users. So it will sound funny, like how can we use users.map? We are fetching this data from this site, right? And what it is, it's an array. So let's just check that. Let's check that actually. So you guys know before we start performing magic. Now you can see that it's an array of data, right? Like what this users is, we are constantly logging the value of users, right? So what the users is just an array, and you can only use the .map method on an array. You cannot use it on an object. I'm going to state that you can only use the .map method on an array. You cannot use it on on an object. Do you get? So you can use the .map if what you want to map is an array only. Like if you use the .map, let's say this now, we are changing this to an object now, right? So essentially this is an object because it has a colon and we're assigning it to just empty strings, right? So if we were to do stuff.map now, it should work if it was an object. You can see set unexpected end of input 119. 119 is 119. I think I'm doing something again. That is wrong somewhere. Oh, okay. Get. This is what is wrong. All right. You see, stuff.map is not a function. And why is that? It's because we cannot perform this action on an object. You cannot do a .map on an object. We can only do it on an array. So if I was to return this to what it was initially, right? Let's return this to its initial state. So and change this back to an array now. We'll see that it will work normally the way it worked, right? We are returning the JavaScript, the classes, and it works. So you can only use the .map method on an array. You cannot use it on an object. And so further explaining what I was explaining. So what we are doing here is we are fetching this users API, right, that has a bunch of random users. We are returning the response and we are turning it to a JSON file. So essentially what a JSON is just an object that we are not assigning to any value. So and we are calling this function. So what the function does for now is just it logs the response, and the response is this users array that you have now. So can we perform the .map on this or we cannot? We can definitely because it's an array, but it just has objects inside of it. So you can do the users.map, right? So for any map, now you have to create the callback function, right? So let's do that. So create the callback function and call it. Let's just do console.log of y now. Y. So let's do data. So you don't get confused because we use y up top too. So you know what we are doing is we are getting for each element inside of this users array, we are getting the data. And what the data will be is going to be an object in this form. Why is it this way? Because the elements, instead of it being strings like we have up top here, like the elements inside of this array are objects. You have object one, object two, object three, like it goes on like that. So instead of it being a string, it prints out those objects. So you won't be confused. In here now, what we have is a string, a string, a string, a string. That's why what it is printing out here is a string. But here, what we have are objects. This is an object, another one, another one, another one. That's why it's printing this out. So let's say also turn this first one here to be an object, right? So JavaScript or let's say JS, right? So you can see now that this first one it changes to an object, right? And the other one still remains string. So that's why this dot map it returns an object here when we are considering logging data. Do you get? So I guys won't be confused that why is this happening? That's what is happening. It is returning the elements that is inside of the array. So you have the first object, the second object, the third object, the fourth object, and the fifth object, and it goes on like that till the last one. Do you understand that? Hello, do we all understand that? Hey.
Yes.
Okay. I think the network is lagging pretty badly. I said that like a while ago, but no problem. So what I want us to do now, everybody, because we all said we understood now, and there are no questions. What I want us to do now is we are already getting this element, right? We are getting the object, right? So I want us to get the name, the username, and shit. Who is that now? So what I want us to do now is, since we already know that we are getting each object, right? I want us to get the name, the username, and the email for each object now using this dot map method. It will require like a little bit of reasoning how you can do it, but I believe you can do it. So let me explain this. This one, it will not be changing. This data, it will not change. So essentially what data is just like the objects that are inside of this user. So you are not going to touch this. So this is what you're going to play with. You're going to get the name, the username, and the email. Don't worry, when you do for one, it will print out that for the rest. So you don't have to do it multiple times. All you have to do is get the name, the username, and the email. So you have let's say 8 minutes. So you'll be stopping 10:05. You have 8 minutes to do that. Everybody can. You are printing out the name, the username, and the email. 10 minutes, guys. 10 minutes. Hopefully you have this URL. Is that one that you used yesterday that has random users? So you should still have it. Please let's acknowledge that we started it so I know, because I don't know if you can hear me. The lag is pretty long.
Sorry, good morning, Mr. Blair. I'm not with my system presently, but I think I get what you said we should do.
And you can write it out on the paper, snap it and send it on the group.
So we heard you. Just that I've not really been following the classes. I didn't come to class for Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'm not following so well. So I'm still trying to watch the videos.
Okay. So how can I help you now? You must do this one. Just try to check it actually. You see, the code is already here. What I just want you to actually check. By the time you will finish watching the video, you understand probably what is going on here. You understand actually. So what I just want you to do is, this is a data, right? And it's an object. I want you to get the name, username, and email. Just do that, and you're fine.
Okay.
It's almost 10:05 already. Already. Now, let me continue my window shopping. Essentially, hopefully, this class is going to end by 10:15. That's when I was instructed to end, so that you guys can go for your soft skills session, and we resume by 11:30, hopefully. Hello, hopefully no one is using my screen. I stop sharing now. Guys, are you done? It should be. It's not something really hard at all. Okay, okay. So the class has been moved up to. Okay. So we still have like 33 minutes. So are we done, guys? Or we are still having difficulties doing it? Because Ellis is not in the call today. How very unusual. You guys are not responding. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
Okay. I was wondering why you're not responding. Are you done or you have issues?
No, I'm not
People,
with my laptop. So there's no way I can do it. I'm on my phone presently. My laptop is low.
I was actually calling other people. I understand.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, guys, we were able to do it. Mary, Daniel, Anu, Ezra, Ronke, Usman, Bilkis. It's been a while. So have you been able to attempt it, please? Or I should give us a bit more time.
Please, I don't understand it though. I don't
Okay,
understand it at all.
let me share my screen again. Okay, so this is what I asked, right? So you know how you can we are getting this user's response, right? And when we console the log that, what the user response is this array here. Here is it. Okay, it's this array here that contains all of this data, right? Now we use this map to actually get the data inside of this user's array, right? So that prints out, let me console log this out. So so this brings out the ID, like it brings out the data in each object. You know, in that array we have 10 objects, right? So you have this first one, second, third till the 10th one. That's the number of objects that we have. Now what I asked you to do was just to get the name, the username, and the email, and console.log it to your browser so you can see. So let's say you wanted to get the name. Now I'm just going to do this one example for you. So what you have to do is dot name, since it's an object, right? It's an object. What you do to get everything is just to do the data dot name. That's why I give the hint that you're not touching this one. The data that you're getting is in form of an object, right? So if you want to get like something from an object, what you do, you use the dot notation. And when you where you need the dot notation, you just do dot, then the name of the property that you want to get, and dot name. If you wanted to do username, you do username this way, right? So and you see now that it just returns the username of those people. So if we return this back to the data, it will show us everything that we have here. So that's essentially what I asked you to do to get the name, the username, and the email of those guys, like of each data you get. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do. So are we going to write anything in the HTML? In the HTML?
No. I just wanted to see it in the console and see that you guys have done it. I didn't actually ask you guys to print it out in the HTML file. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so another quiz now, 5 minutes. You're going to get, you know, this, it has an address, right? And in the address, you have the street property and the city. So you're getting the street and the city from each data now. Do you get how you do that? So to get that, let's say you want to do two things together, you can do dot name, comma, then we do data dot username like this, and you should get both at the same time. So you have, let's make this plus space then plus. So now there's a space in between all of them. So you have this Liam Graham, then Brett, or let's make this a dash dash dash. So you know there's a space in between. Now you have this is the username, this is the name, this is the username, and it goes that way till the last one. So what I want you to do now is you are going to print out the streets. Let's return to the normal position. So you are going to return the street, right, which is inside the address object. You're going to return the street and also the city that you are in, like for each element. So that's what you have to do. Do you get everybody? See, I'm going to assume that we all have, and you guys are not responding. If you're in a place where you cannot talk, kindly do so and say that in the message so I can know.
No, we are
We
with
are
you.
all,
We can all
we are,
hear. We can all hear you.
we
Yeah,
are,
Yeah, hear me.
yeah, the responses. You're not giving responses. I'm saying, do you
Sorry,
we are hearing.
understand?
sorry. We'll start responding. Sorry.
Okay, so that's all you have to do, the city and the street. 5 minutes. Fatima, the attendance, could you kindly set that up? I don't know, someone asked me. Trying to ask.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Melko now.
Okay.
Why is it quiet here? Is it just me?
Sorry, what? What did you say? Daniel, you were saying something.
I said it's quiet. I was locked out. When I came back, everywhere is quiet. So I wanted to know
Oh,
what's up.
okay. So I assigned a like small task. So in 5 minutes, that's why we was quiet. I was not sharing my screen.
Okay, okay.
Yes. So are we done? Hello, I know everybody. Have you been able to do it, or still we are still getting giving us issues? It's still giving us issues.
I'm not done yet. I'm still on it.
Okay. Let's give probably an extra 3 minutes. Sure. I'll just give an hint. It's an object. You should be able to like if you want to index into something. I mentioned it quite a number of times yesterday. You just have to put the dots and the dots. Like you do the dots to go to address, then you do another dots to go to wherever you want to go to. Like you want to get a value. So that's essentially what there is to it. But I guess it will take like a number of practice before you know how to do it very well. Sure. Also, I'll give like extra 3 minutes. So whatever. Okay, I guess you should be done by now. I'm just going to make corrections. So I'll share my screen. So for that
Done now. I've been able to do it.
okay. Okay. Would you like to share with me so we see? Yeah. Let me make you co-host and stop sharing. So yeah, co-host now.
Can you see my screen?
It's not coming up yet, it's still blank. So let's wait a bit. Yeah, I can see it now. All right. But it's returning undefined. Oh, your screen stopped sharing.
Let me share my own screen. Can you see it?
Yes, I can. Press Ctrl J. Okay. Go to where you wrote the code because I can see that it's returning undefined.
It's returning undefined.
Yeah,
This is where I read the code.
okay. The reason behind that is because if you see, look at the data. Come to before you did users.map, console.log what user is. No, like users, this response that I get in users, capital, you can just press enter that way. Okay. Then comment out the next line.
This line,
Yes,
user.map.
If, oh, on comment it, you've done something wrong. All right. Go to users of that users.map line alone. If you want to comment the whole line out, you can just do it. Once you're on the line, you press Control and front slash forward slash.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's go to your console and see the results. Now open it up. Then open the object up. Now you can see now that the street itself is not located on the main page like the name and the phone and the username. So you have to first get to address first before you actually reach street. So this thing is kind of like a tree structure, right? So you have to always touch the first branch before you go to the one that is buried deep inside. You get.
Okay, so I'll do data dot address.
Yes, you do data dot address, then you now do dot street. So that's how you get the street. And the same thing with city too. So try that out. ADDRES. Yeah. So do the same thing for the city too. Okay, so let's check it now. On comment it, just do control forward slash. do that same control again to greet. Yeah. So you can see now that you have, just put a space in between. Go to your code. There you have that empty string. Just put 2 spaces there or 3 spaces. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Right. So that's how you get objects inside of a data. Now data inside of an object rather. So should I still make the correction, guys, or you've understood from our code, or I should make the correction?
Let's see your own.
Okay. Let me share. It's cold outside. Okay, so essentially you have this users.map data, then we are also going to log in the data out to it. And if you check our console, so this is essentially load up. Okay, it's loaded now. So we have this address, company, the email, the ID, and all of that. So let's say we wanted to get the let's say we wanted to get the street, city, dot address dot street, right? So you can do dot address dot, was it city? Yeah, city. If you check this out, we have the street, then the city here on different pages. Let's do that. And let's do this. All right. I see we have the address here, or the street name here, then the city here. So let's say we wanted to get something else. Let's see what other information we have from users. Okay. So let's say we wanted to get company, we wanted to get the name and also the catchphrase. So we can also do something like so it won't seem odd. What I'm doing is still the same thing. You know, if it's on a single line, you can write if you want to write a function, write a function like this, right? Write something like age, let's say equals this. Age, then say is equal to something like this, right? So essentially that's the same thing that I'm doing here. Instead of writing the everything on a single line, I created this curly braces so that I can write multiple lines. So it shouldn't look funny to you guys that why am I doing that? So that's why I'm writing multiple lines. Okay. So let's say we wanted to get the company name. Let's see. I just want to see the company name. So the company has name and catchphrase. So let's say we want to get company.name, right? And this should be company dot, what's the catchphrase? I want to see how they wrote the catchphrase. Catchphrase, okay. Catchphrase this way. Now you see that it will print out the name of, you see, let's make this, let's consider something else. So you see that for every user now, for every user, it prints out the city, the street. Then for the company, it prints out the, what's it called? Prints out the company name and also the, what's it called, the catchphrase. Let's check that out to see if it is correct. So for the first one, we have Roma, whatever, and multi-layered. So it's the same for this one. So the next one, we have Victor. We have Victor Plains as the street. So we have Victor Plains here, and this street is whatever this is. And for the company name, we have we have Deco Christ and Proactive whatever. So we have Deco Christ and Proactive whatever. So that's how we can get multiple data items from a single array or a single object. So I hope you understand this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think I should release us now. So I get to prepare and get resume early to the class. Or I said 40, because I really have no idea what we should be doing now. When we resume the class, I just want us to to start, if possibly, we can finish the um, the app that I asked for that we want to build, the to-do list app. So we should be able to do that, at least one or two things from there today. If it's only the UI design set, we should be able to do that today. So by tomorrow, hopefully, we can have the.
Sorry, before we go, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
For this, for what we just did now, let's say we want to do it like yesterday, where we had to separate the name, like each data, the name, the
Okay.
address, and so on. How do we do that? Can the for loop work with
You don't
map?
need you don't need a for loop again actually to get. So what you can do, let's say you want to let's make this more structured, right? Because this is not a good way to do this. So what we can actually do is, let's say we have something like, let's rest, and this is going to be an empty object by default, right? So what we can do is, so let's say we wanted to get like the name of the company, right? And also the company, okay, the catchphrase, right? Catchphrase, and also what again? Let's just do like the address now, right? By default, all of these are empty, right? So let's say we are getting a particular data. We want to be able to like map that data to this one that we have here. So for each item, we have the name, the catchphrase, and the address of the companies that are in the data now. So what we can do is, we can just say rest dot name to be equal to, we can do data dot. So let's say the name of the person is what we want to get. We can do data dot name, right? Then we do something like res dot catchphrase, right? It will be equal to, then data dot address. Oh no, it's not going to be equal to string. So with data dot address dot, oh, it's not address, it's not that company. I'll explain this in a minute so that it don't feel like I'm doing something else. Catchphrase, then comma res dot address now. So let's say we wanted to set this to be equals to a particular street. So let's say we want to set this to data dot address dot street, right? Now we have this res object, right, which we have the name, the person's name, the catchphrase of the company that the person is working in, and the address, but they are all empty by default, right? So what I'm doing here is, whenever we have the data, res.name is going to be whatever value this is, right? And my review and the whole class too, this is for you guys. So res.name is going to be whatever the value of this is, and by default it is an empty string. But since we're using let, we can change whatever we have here. So rest.name, we are setting it to data.name, right? Which is going to be the name that we're getting from this data. For catchphrase too, remember from the last one that we did is under company. So we do data.company.catchphrase, and the address is under the data.address.street. So essentially, if you want to assign those values to something like this, what you just have to do is you call the values that you want to assign, then you assign them to whatever you want to assign them to. I don't know if I communicate what I'm saying. So let's say this line I do something like console.log res. Now you see that for the first one, it prints out the name of the company, right? The name of the person, the catchphrase of the company, and the street. I don't know if it is clear, but okay, this is it here. So the name, this is for the last one. It prints out the name, right? The catchphrase of that person's company and the address. So let's say you want to set specific data now. That's how you go about it. You just change whatever value you have there into data.name. Now we'll get the person's name, right? Because this is what it is. Data.name, Leanne Graham. You see, it gets Leanne Graham. Now, if you check under the person's company, the catchphrase, multi-layered client, blah, 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 blah. If you check here now, you have multi-layered client server, which is what we are getting here, data.company.catchphrase, right? And for address, you just do data.address, right? .street. So data.address.street is class light. So it will do the same thing for each of the data that is inside of this array. Did you get that, Maru?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So any other questions? It's 10:40 already, so that you guys can leave the call and attend the class. We resume the call whenever you're done. So Michael, please, I don't know if it is time for like when they're doing the class. Can you kindly just remind me on WhatsApp? Because I want to do something now. I might skip my mind, so I might come late to the class. So can you just remind me so I'll be able to join the class very early? Is he listening? It's probably listening. All right, guys, you can go for your class. I guess Michael is doing something. You probably just stay in the call so that